Hello everyone, and thanks for coming back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the all-new Emax TinyHawk II Race. Powered by 1103, 7500 kV motors, Emax Avon tri-bladed props, Runcam Nano 2 FPV camera, all-in-one flight controller and ESC, which is 5 amps. The receiver's still D8 mode. The VTX is power switchable from 25 milliwatts to 100 milliwatts, 200 milliwatts, and 37 channels. You do get a USB charger, a little tiny screwdriver, and a bag full of various screws. It does come with a jumper for 1S flight, but I don't suggest you use it. You also get two Emax 450 milliamp 1S batteries, solid pin PH2 connectors, and say it with me, stickers. It weighs 45.25 grams. With the two 1S batteries, it weighs 70.75 grams. Carbon bottom plate is 2 millimeters thick, and motor post to motor post I'm getting about 90 millimeters. And it does come in a case, but it doesn't fit all the way down with props on. As we sit here on the table, you see that we do have a little bit of a breeze. You see that branches on that tree moving just ever so slightly. And as that wind picks up, you'll see it have an impact on the tune. This machine is very, very light, so wind is not its friend. And we have gusts in my area, so while it might be 2 to 4 miles an hour through some of the flight, it can pick up to 8 to 10 miles an hour. And when I would feel those breezes coming through, or on days when I tried to fly it where it was blowing well over 10 miles an hour, it really had an impact on the tune. It's definitely much more tune friendly or flight friendly on days where it's much calmer. That shouldn't be terribly surprising with the weight, but the wind has a greater impact on this than it does on other quads of a similar weight. As much as that wind surprised me about how it impacted the tune, I do have other quads that I've built or that I've reviewed that weigh about the same, that the wind didn't seem to have quite the impact. So it's something to be aware of, that if you live in a place like I do where the wind can come and go and you rarely have wind-free days. I've actually got another quad I've been trying to go out and fly, but it just requires a really still day. I've tried to last 4 days without any success. But let's go back to the flight of the quad. Emax has been making this TinyHawk line as something that is really friendly for beginners to get into. You know, they have the ready to fly kit with the TinyHawk that has the kind of the pusher prop whoop type of racer style of indoor quad, and I have been recommending that ready to fly kit. And the main reason why I recommend it is because it does come from Emax. Emax is a known entity all through FPV. You can go to their Facebook groups to get some help on something. You can open up support tickets. You might even have some contacts on Facebook that work for Emax. So it's a known entity, so the reliability should be there if you have any problems. But if you've had other experiences, please leave them in the comment section below, good and bad. You know, all the information is always good when we're trying to make purchase decisions, and especially when you're new to this hobby, that can be a little bit of a challenge. Every once in a while you do see the low voltage pop up as I ride the throttle through some of these harder turns, and all these 180 turns that I tend to do at speed are pretty hard on batteries. You'll see the throttle value get up to 70, maybe a little bit over 70, especially, you know, when I did that one punch over the house. It's really not designed to be a high flyer, but it's something that you can do, and just because it's got race in the name doesn't mean you have to just race with it. You know, most quads can have an underslung or they could be top mounted battery, and you can still do all the same moves. It just comes down to pilot preference on what mounting feels best to you. In this particular case, I think racing oftentimes does have an underslung battery, so they went with that. And I do think that there are many quad clubs that have established micro categories. They might not be officially sanctioned, I don't know. I'm just kind of a lone pilot in my backyard. I don't live anywhere near any multi-GP races, and I just don't have time for that. But so check with your local clubs to see if they have races that fit this specification for a quad like this if you're looking at it, because it's a good way of getting involved and also getting around other people that have experiences. They might be able to help you to branch out into other things or show you some equipment, especially goggles and radios. If you're looking at those things, it's always nice to get perspective of having it in your hand rather than relying on, you know, video reviews. Some of those things are very, very personal. And you see that I come in at the end of the flight and I get 3 minutes and 20 seconds, and as we flash back to the main screen, we see that the batteries do recover over 3.5 volts per cell. So pretty good shape, pretty long flight time, even though I kind of feel I was riding it hard. I wasn't doing a lot of punch outs, but I was doing the racing style. This is just another video I wanted to show you guys that You know, especially people who are newer to the hobby, they're kind of that proof of concept that even though racing really fits my style, it's kind of like what I like. I like to fly low, I like to fly around things. You can not only do that, but you can do other fun things with quads. It doesn't have to be top mounted in order to be able to do freestyle. Again, it's personal preference. Some people like the feel of a battery on top when they're doing a particular kind of flying. But this is well capable of doing most micro moves. You know, you're not going to be a high flyer. You're not going to be punching out and having a lot of carry because there just isn't that sort of thrust and weight. But you could do a fair number of fun things that might be aerobatic. You might not see them that way, but you know, this is just me going out and doing some different things from what I wanted to do, and I thought it would be a good video to include, especially as this is targeted at getting started in FPV and maybe a micro spec racing as well. I do know, to add on what I said earlier about some of the local racing clubs and their establishment of micro racing, that some of them have been very specific to a particular kind of quad. So you might want to check into that further to make sure that even though they might have 2S micros and they might have a certain specification on the propeller, that, you know, there could be other qualifiers, like it might have to be an Emax product, or it might have to be a particular kind of quad or a particular prop size. You know, you need to know all those things before you dive in, if that's something you're interested in. And I also show you this because it ends in a crash, which is off of cement, which is rare because I do fly in my backyard, but we bang it off of that fire pit there, and maybe you've gotten that bench a little bit and you see that I just take right back off and finish out, fly over myself because I'm too lazy to walk over there and get it. So I've probably already shown you the most dramatic crash that I had in that little footage that I showed me doing different things other than just the racing style, but I'll run a little video up here. I think it's got 4 or 5 other crashes in it as well, and that's something that's always of concern when you're starting out in this hobby. And one thing that I feel about this canopy, or the plastic material, it feels more robust than I've felt in other TinyHawk products, and I don't know if that's just because it's so firmly mounted down to this carbon and I'm used to feeling this plastic attached to other plastic, or they actually thickened the material, or they may have used some different plastic chemistry within the development of this. So I do think that this is going to be pretty hardy. Of course, that varies. I've only shown you one crash in cement. If you bang it around asphalt and cement all the time, you know, all bets are off. We do have the tiniest bit of motor protection out here. Some people really like to see that. Note the motor pattern here is 3 bolts. Also note that the motor wires are soldered onto the ESC ports, but if you can see right down in here, it still has the connectors. So if you were to buy motors that you wanted to try that fit this motor mounting pattern and you wanted to plug in the connectors, you might be able to do that. I do think this plastic bit is sitting flush on top of those, so you may have to raise this up, which isn't something I suggest, but it's an option. You have a button right back here for your VTX, if you can see that. Get those antennas out of the way. There's a button. You can use that to change your channels and your band, but you're better off using the OSD. To use the OSD, you get your radio out. If this is mode 2, left stick mid, full left, right stick full up, you'll see the OSD pop up on screen. Then you navigate and change values with these sticks, and you'll go into the features and then into the smart audio, and you'll change your band and your channel. Also, that's where you change your power setting as well. The Runcam Nano 2, it's one of my favorite nano cameras in this price point. Of course, there are other nano cameras that run in the $30 marker, but they've gone with the Runcam Nano 2. You can see I've got one wire that's come up here a little bit. Nothing really for me to worry about. Probably came up because of my manipulation of the camera angle. Also note my antennas. There's this little gap on each side of the canopy, and I just loosen those screws and then move the antennas into those screws and then tighten them back down. I did add heat shrink to this one. You can see it's actually really loose. Just to firm up this little area of the antenna down here, because I felt it was a bit floppy and I didn't want it getting down into the prop. Also note that we don't have any prop mounting screws. These are push on. I didn't have any problems with it. I did add the zip tie to the back to make sure my battery lead was hunkered down, so if you do have a bad crash and your batteries happen to come loose from their mounting and their strap, that this provides some protection of pulling these wires off your ESC. Again, that is an all-in-one ESC and flight controller, so if you yank those pads off, then you got to buy a $40+ part. You can see from the pattern that we do have airflow through the arms rather than traditional arms. That's an interesting take on designing a racing frame. And if we look here closely at the bottom, everything's got a swoop to it. So no real straight lines. That may be of benefit for durability. It may not. We have hex-headed screws on our motors, and then we have Phillips-headed screws for mounting. Oh, I noticed, I must be missing a screw right there. I wonder if that came off while I was flying. So I need to put that screw back. And we also have this battery pad right here. This isn't necessarily really sticky, but it's not foam and slick. Sometimes we get these battery pads that are really slick and they really just don't help us much. We're almost better off just hunkering the batteries down to the carbon. But this is rubberized, so it will stick a little bit to it. It's not like Grip. And then they did a nice job and they went ahead and cut it out to make sure that it fit the frame and alignment. You don't get any extras of those, so if this happens to come off, then you'll have to do something yourself in order to put a battery mat back down. You see this one particular hole right here. Hopefully you can see that. Let me zoom in. This hole right here, that lines up with your bind button. That's a nice touch there, so it should make binding pretty simple and easy. So you plug in your USB port to give it some power, or you can plug in batteries, and then you press down with, I used actually a paper clip, because a paper clip fit real nice right through there, and I just pressed down. Kind of the same sort of trick we used to use back in the day to get CD-ROM trays out when the band had broken on the ejection mechanism on CD-ROM trays back in the day. So that's how you would bind your D8 receiver. Make sure you understand that this is D8. They listed as D8, not compatible with D16. So if you have one of the newer FrSky radios, they don't support D8 without an add-on module to your radio. Something to keep in mind that's very, very important there. It comes with 2 Pitt Profiles, and I chose Pitt Profile 2. I don't think there was a huge difference between the two, but when you get it and you want to try the other Pitt Profile, it's already built in there as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we also see other Pitt Profiles come out, either from Emax or from others that you might want to try as well. Of course, Facebook and RC groups are 2 great places to find those resources. It'll take some time, after launch, that those things will develop, say 60 days or something like that, where other people will find other tunes. I did not tweak out the tune. I want to make sure I showed you this with Emax's tune on it, which I was a little bit surprised wasn't a little bit better, but it could have been the limitation of running 2S on these particular motors with these props. I'm not certain. We may find that there are other props that work better for this too. This hobby, we're always tinkering and changing things out. So if you're a new person, I would highly encourage you to, if you are comfortable with it, to join RC groups as well as some of the Facebook groups. There's Emax official groups as well as some of the other like micro brushless groups. You just have to search for those and join those. I think for those pilots that are more experienced and interested in this, you'll probably also want to lop this off. In other words, cut it off and then add an XT30 connection. We have found in the past that when you have a connection that can handle more flow from the batteries, that you do get some added performance. It could shorten your battery or shorten your flight time with that added performance, or it actually could lengthen it. It really depends upon the resistance of the connector. Again, these are solid pins, which are the best pins in the PH2 category. Let's look at a touch of a 1S flight. It's really, really not good on 1S. I'm only showing you this because I need to. It comes with a little jumper so that you can fly at 1S, but I tried several times to fly at 1S, and before I reached back out to Emax and I said, hey, this is really not good. Are we sure this is a 1S sort of flyer? And they commented that no, it's really designed for 2S, that you should fly it for 2S. So I show you that as a cautionary tale so that you don't think this will fly nearly as well on 1S as it does a 2S. It's really designed for 2S and really 2S only. Little note about the charger. You see we have LEDs out here in front of all the little connections. and those flicker when you have nothing plugged in. They go solid when they're charging, and they turn off when they're done charging. I did charge a few batteries on this, and I didn't find where I had any problems with it. Of course, there's a variable there. In my case, it worked just fine. I only charged a couple of batteries. Otherwise, I used my standard hobby grade charger. And but that's how this operates. You can use this. I think as you progress, like most of us in this hobby, that you'll end up getting a charger that's a little bit better than this. You can control the charging rate. You maybe be able to control more batteries, because if you plug in 6 batteries into this, it can only get so much power via USB. So it's going to slow down depending upon how many batteries you've got plugged in. So good to get started, but long term, you're probably going to want a different charger. And this is my preferred charger. It's the HTRC X4. Works great. You know, you can do standard LiPos, you can do high volts LiPos, you can control the rate with the turn dials. It's got several different connectors for different sorts of battery types, but you know, we're mainly looking at the MCP-X or the PH20 connector in this case. But this is a really good charger at around 30 bucks. And I'll put a link down in the video description if you're interested in getting something like this. At the time of this recording, I don't know exactly how much this is going to cost, but I will put a link down in the video description to the product page on the Emax website. I'll add links to other shops as they become available, but I think this is going to come in around somewhere around $110. It might be a little bit more than that, but I think it's going to be close to that. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.